How we doing there, boys and girls? Manthieus here, and welcome back to another video. So today it's time to have a little bit of a look at tailoring. Tailoring, getting from skill 1 to 100 is not going to be too challenging, but like most professions in both Dragonflight and the War Within, we're going to get to about skill 60, and then it's going to slow down, and we're going to have a few options if we want to push to level 100. There is the slow and steady approach via work orders, considering we are a predominantly gear crafting profession. We deal with all of the cloth gear, all of the mages, the priests, the warlocks are going to be very interested in our gear. But the actual leveling process is pretty straightforward. We'll dive straight into the materials then. We're going to need a bunch of moss wool thread. This is a new vendor reagent, so be careful. Don't buy this on the auction house. It's going to be expensive if you buy this on the auction house. Tailoring vendors. If you are standing in Dornogal right now, look to your left or your right. You'll probably find your profession NPC vendor, and you should be able to buy some moss wool thread. We need 340 of this. We also need a roughly, actually 340 is wrong. We actually only need about 160 weaver cloth. Corrections, live corrections. Need about 160. I won't go as far as to delete the others because I know we don't need it. We need about 160 weaver cloth. We need 20 ley line residue, and we also need 22 writhing samples. Both of these are rare materials gathered by herbalism and mining. It's been very difficult to guesstimate the price of these on the beta, but this is still your cheapest path to success with tailoring all the same. Quick note. In the War Within, for the first time in World of Warcraft and tailoring history, tailors are the only class that can loot weaver cloth or loot cloth in general. Unless you have tailoring, you are not going to be finding any of this. This goes for Duskweave and Dawnweave, two uncommon cloths that have been introduced in the War Within as well. Tailors are the only people that are going to be able to gather cloth, which is likely to have quite an impact on the price of it. If you've been used to cloth being super duper mega cheap, now that tailors are the only people that can gather it, there is going to be a little bit more requirement on them to go out and get it, which should help keep the price a little bit more buoyant, a little bit more in line with what we expect from like herbs and ore and other gathered materials. But anyway, let's progress on. The full leveling path from 1 to 100 is documented in my War Within guide. This is now available to my gold goblins over on Patreon, along with, full written version of this guide, full details on knowledge gains, where to get your knowledge points, what spec trees are going to be useful to you, and plenty more. Bit of a thank you from me to all of my long-time patrons, and if you jump into Gold Goblin status, you can grab yourself a copy of this today. I'll leave a link in the description for that down below. Right, so let's get going then. Tailoring is, we're going to start with unravelling. This is a similar mechanic to what we saw in Dragonflight. This will not be uncommon to some of you. We have to turn our weaver cloth into spools of weaver thread first. We're going to need a whole bunch of these. Whilst technically we only need to get to skill 10 right now, we're going to do a whole bunch of this anyway. So if you want to push forward and just unravel a whole bunch of this weaver cloth right now, feel free. It does go grey, I believe, at skill 10, so we're not going to get skill points for it anymore. But, you're going to have to unravel it at some point anyway. Whilst this is unraveling, I just want to quickly talk about quality. You will notice weaver cloth has 3 different quality ranks. Our spools also have 3 different quality ranks. There's an entire spec tree designated to being better at this unraveling process. And I have my suspicions that it might be quite lucrative, especially in the early days of the expansion. So if you're still undecided to what spec to pick with tailoring, just doing some processing and getting better at doing it could be very lucrative. Anyway, we learned a few new bits and pieces. We're going to now look at crafting some of these spools using this moss wool thread. We're going to look at crafting some of this into weaver cloth bolts. Similar scenario again here. Since we get skill points from doing it, we might as well. We only need to get to skill 20 for the purpose of leveling up right now. But if you want to craft some more, once again, feel free. You're going to need to eventually anyway. At skill 20, we'll learn the ability to recraft other people's gear. Not that you'll be doing too much recrafting just yet, but of course tailoring is a profession that heavily leans on work orders, so get used to that at some point. We're going to craft 3 pioneer cloth robes next. We've got the bolts already, we need to craft these. Going to be at skill 25 that you'll unlock your first spec tree as well. Now, I don't really recommend unlocking the spec trees just yet unless you have a really solid idea of what spec you're going into, because tailors have 4 spec trees. We unlock the first one right now at 25, or you unlock access to one. You do get to choose. We don't get a second one until we hit skill 50. We have to hit skill 60 to unlock the third one, and we have to surpass skill 75 to unlock access to all of them. So unless you know exactly which direction you plan to go in right now, feel free to have a little bit of a look at them with the view form tree button, but don't feel the need to unlock them just yet unless you want to. Let's learn a whole bunch of more recipes. We've hit skill 26 and we need to get to skill 30 by crafting some pioneer cords. I'm a little bit short on some weaver cloth bolts, so maybe let's get a few of those crafted quickly. Unfortunately, a lot of the gear that we craft at this stage is not really going to be worth too much. It is basic leveling gear, but the downside is going to be that we're going to be crafting it at very, very low quality right now. You can throw this up on the auction house, but please be aware that you may be lucky to sell it if you sell it at all at this low quality, especially the later we get into the expansion. Doing it, crafting it, selling it in the first week, you should be fine, but most of the stuff you craft whilst leveling is basically considered vendor trash. Or if you've got some other use for it on alts or something, feel free to use it there. But don't expect to make too much of this gold back in the early days. We're going to make 2 of the cords to hit skill 30. This is going to go yellow at skill 30. Stops giving us guaranteed skill points. Now we're going to make the cloak. This is probably the only exception to what I've literally just said. Because the cloak can be worn by anybody, and at item level 518, it's probably going to be slightly better than what most people turn up to in the War Within as well, especially if they didn't play that character at level 70. So the cloaks, even though we're only going to craft 3 of these for the purpose of the leveling guide, the cloaks are something that you should probably put on the auction house. We're going to be able to make them at quality 2 at this point. So they're good enough to sell, these ones. That's the point I'm trying to get across here. We learned some new recipes. We're going to craft 2 of the mantles. We're not crafting everything we unlock at this point, and this is kind of by design. What you want to do is get your skill up nice and quickly. Once you've got your profession leveled up and you've started to get some of your profession tools and accessories, then you want to go back and you want to try and craft 1 of everything. That way you will hopefully craft something that might be worth something to somebody else, and you can throw it up on the auction house and hopefully make some gold back from it. For leveling, we try and keep it kind of optimized. We've reached skill 40 though. We unlocked the bright and the gritty polishing cloths. Now these have the exact same materials. We're going to craft these all the way up to skill 50. So if you haven't got enough weaver cloth bolts, make sure you craft a few more. Let's get a few more of these. But also, this is one of those opportunities where, because they cost exactly the same, you might as well craft 1 of each, and then craft a whole bunch more of whichever one you think might be more valuable. That way, you'll get your first time craft bonus, and you won't have to worry about it later. Quickly unravel a little bit more cloth as we have run out of bolts to be able to complete the next stage. Now we should have enough to craft 10 of these, which will guarantee us a skill point all the way to skill 50. Craft the bright one first to get our first time craft bonus. Quickly blast through 9 more of the gritty ones. Artisan's Acuity and knowledge points are granted for the first time crafts. If you've not played with the Dragonflight professions at all, the first time you craft something you will gain this currency called Artisan's Acuity. This is a really useful currency that is used in many places with your professions. It's a key component to your profession leveling and the progression. It's needed in great quantities to make your top tier tools and accessories. And for tailors especially, you're going to need huge quantities of these to collect all of the recipes. But we'll talk about that in a minute. At skill 50, our options start to slim down. We don't have many options at this point, but what we're going to look at doing is crafting weaver cloth embroidery threads up until skill 60. I've run out of weaver cloth bolts in true fashion, so let's quickly unravel a little bit more to be able to make those. We need enough to make maybe 10 to 12 of these. They go yellow at skill 55, so we need to craft a little bit more than 10. 12 to 14 is usually going to be enough. Whilst these are crafting, we can talk about this little item. This hasn't got much to do with the leveling guide, but I feel it necessary to talk about this because it's quite cool. The Algari Weaver line, this is everybody that wants to do any sort of significant fishing is going to require one of these, which is quite a cool addition to tailors. When you apply this to your fishing rod, it gives you a permanent perception and fishing skill increase. So if you want to be doing any fishing in the endgame zones, players are going to want to get their hands on this. You might find many people interested in this. I believe it can be acquired through work orders because, of course, it uses artisan's acuity to craft. So if you are a tailor, keep your eyes out for orders on this. You might get quite a few people interested at the beginning of the expansion. I seem to have miscalculated on the bolts again, of course. Maybe we just unravel the rest of this weaver cloth at this point. I'm confident in my numbers, so we should have enough here. I did test this 2 or 3 times just to check that the material list at the beginning was accurate. Right, that should be plenty of cloth. No, what are we missing? Oh dear, I've shot myself in the foot. I missed out 1 moss wool thread. What a bad content creator. I'll update the list. You need to buy 1 more moss wool thread. Luckily, it's only a vendor item, so it shouldn't be too problematic. 54, 55. We take these all the way to 60. As you can see, they've gone yellow. Good old RNG is not going to work in my favor right now. Let me grab a couple more moss wool threads. There was me claiming I was confident in my materials, and it turns out I shouldn't have been. Buy a whole bunch more of these. These are only going to be like, these aren't going to cost you anything. They're a vendor material. It's absolutely fine. Let's see if we can get this to skill 60 now. Never lucky, of course. Well, the point still stands, so you can craft this up until 60. Let's talk about where we go from here, though, because at skill 60, our options start to slim down. This is where you're going to have to start looking at choosing your path that you plan to go in, whether you are going the armor crafting route or whether you're going the sort of the rare cooldown bolt route, or whether you are looking at being better at crafting the intermediates. There's a few different options to go with tailoring. My little goblin guide to the war within can give you a little bit of an overview to each of these if you are struggling. I will endeavour to put some videos together in a bit more detail about the spec trees soon, but this is just for the purpose of leveling today. The first thing you're going to look at as an option is the profession gear. Tailors don't make a huge amount of profession accessories, but the ones they do make I think are going to be quite popular. Tailors make the chef's hats, they make the fishing caps. The gardening hat is going to be very popular, in fact borderline mandatory for herbalists, so you might get some orders coming in for this. The thing to note with all of these though is they're going to require this artisan's acuity currency that we spoke about earlier. At this moment in time, we're not going to have much of this. If you are looking to buy some of these recipes, you're going to need to acquire some more of this. The main way you get this is by doing your weekly knowledge point quests, or also looking at patron orders. Quite often when you fill patron orders, let's see if I can find one quickly. Here we go. Quite often when you fill patron orders, one of the rewards will be artisan's acuity. If you need some artisan's acuity for the purpose of buying some of these recipes to continue leveling, consider that. Alternatively, considering this is, it's work orders, hopefully you're going to get some orders for this as soon as possible, but the further the expansion goes on, the less orders you'll see with these. Option number 2 is going to be bags. Bags are pretty cool. Tailors, whilst we haven't spoke about this in too much detail right now, where have they gone? Embroidered bags. Tailors make a whole bunch of bags. These are profession bags. They're epic. They're going to come from work orders once again. But nearly most professions are going to be interested in one of these. They do cost artisans acuity, which is going to mean that it's not the highest priority for most crafters out there to get their hands on one of these. But that doesn't mean you won't see work orders for these in the first few weeks. Learning the recipes for these is also likely to cost you quite a lot of artisans acuity here. This is a bit of a pattern with tailoring. Getting access to most of the professions, most of the recipes for the profession is not going to be particularly cheap. So be aware that it may take you many weeks, maybe even months to acquire all of the recipes on your tailor. I wish it was a little bit quicker and easier, but unfortunately, the way that they have constrained artisans' acuity, you're going to get roughly 200 to 250 of this a week. How and where you spend it is going to be up to you. Another option is Dawn, where's it gone? Dawn thread lining and dusk thread linings. I noted these down as a possible option. These come from, well, one of them comes from Heavy Trunks in Delves, so you might be able to get this recipe, quote unquote, for free. You might have to go complete some delves to try and get it, but this is available to you. There's a good chance that when the game goes live as well, these will hit the auction house. The recipes for these might be on the auction house, so if you want to skip the grind and maybe throw some gold at it, that's another option. These will let you go all the way from skill 60 up to 100. They go green at skill 90 though, so the last 10 points by crafting these is going to be a real chore. But, if you are willing to throw gold at it just to get the job done fast, that is an option. What else have we got? There was another option I had here. Oh yes, of course, the actual straight up just endgame crafted gear. Your consecrated set. You are going to have to predominantly wait for the season to begin because players are going to need sparks to put their orders in for this. But if you choose to start speccing into the Threads of Devotion tree, which is your main gear crafting tree, you can start unlocking some of the endgame recipes and waiting for the work orders to come on those. Prior to the season launching, you might have some success with patron orders. As we've already sort of mentioned, patron orders will not only give you access to some artisan security. These are going to be a key component for getting your knowledge points on a weekly basis as well. So it's definitely worth trying to complete as many of these patron orders as you can as well. But that should give you a few options to get to skill 100 in tailoring. It's not as fast as I would like it to be, especially if you are looking at using your artisan security to buy recipes. You're then going to find yourself pretty short when it comes to your tools. And also there's plenty of places to spend artisan security on knowledge points. So you've got a few options to think about there. I hope that's going to help you. I hope that brings a little bit more clarity for the leveling. You should be able to get to about 70, 80 pretty comfortably. The last few points, though, are still going to be a bit of a grind, but this is a consistent pattern with most of the professions in the War Within. So yeah, there we go, boys and girls. Give the video a like if you enjoy this kind of content. Consider hitting that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace.